When Margaret turned 74, she began noticing subtle changes, forgetting names, feeling unusually tired after short walks, and waking up with a heavy head. Her doctor assured her it wasn't a disease, but gently asked, "What have you been eating lately?" That question stayed with her. It wasn't about losing weight or cutting calories. It was about something deeper, how food fuels the body's most vital organs, the heart and the brain. These two organs are tireless. The heart beats more than 100,000 times a day, circulating life-sustaining blood. The brain, although only about 2% of our body weight, consumes over 20% of our energy, coordinating thought, movement, and memory. And yet, we rarely consider how our meals affect them. When we eat poorly, too many processed foods, too much sugar or saturated fats, we aren't just upsetting our digestion. We are quietly sabotaging the health of our most essential systems. Unhealthy food leads to chronic inflammation, a hidden enemy that stiffens blood vessels and elevates blood pressure. This weakens the heart and limits the brain's access to oxygen and nutrients, impairing memory, clarity, and emotional balance. It's not just about cholesterol or waistlines. It's about function, resilience, and longevity. What we eat can either support or disrupt the circulation that feeds our heart and mind. For instance, high-sodium diets increase the risk of strokes by raising blood pressure. Excessive sugars contribute to insulin resistance, affecting the brain's chemistry and increasing the risk of cognitive decline. Trans fats can build plaque in arteries, restricting the heart's ability to pump efficiently. But the good news is just as powerful. A thoughtful diet, rich in nutrients, antioxidants, and healthy fats, can act like a daily dose of medicine. It can sharpen memory, lower blood pressure, stabilize mood, and reduce the risk of heart disease and dementia. This isn't about following the latest trends. It's about building a way of eating that strengthens the very core of your being. Margaret took her doctor's words to heart. Literally, she didn't change everything overnight, but she began to choose foods that nurtured her from the inside out. Her energy returned, her mind felt clearer, and she smiled more. This story isn't unique. With the right choices, anyone can begin to protect their brain and heart. In the chapters ahead, we'll explore which foods offer the most powerful support and how to build a balanced, sustainable diet that nourishes body and mind at every age. When Edward retired at 68, he was determined to stay sharp and active. He had watched too many friends drift into a quiet decline. Less energy, more forgetfulness, and frequent doctor visits. Determined to take a different path, he began researching how food could help him stay vibrant. What he discovered changed his life. Certain foods, when eaten consistently, could support both his heart and his mind. Leafy greens became a daily staple. Spinach, kale, and broccoli weren't just healthy in a vague sense. They were packed with folate and other B vitamins that helped blood flow and nourished brain cells. Edward was surprised to learn that these vegetables actually supported neurotransmitter function, keeping his thinking more fluid and responsive. He started each lunch with a hearty salad, feeling lighter, but also more mentally alert afterward. Then came the berries, small but mighty. Blueberries, in particular, caught his attention. Studies showed they were rich in flavonoids, compounds that reduce inflammation and oxidative stress, both major contributors to cognitive aging and heart disease. Edward began adding a handful to his morning oatmeal, not just for flavor, but with a sense of purpose. Strawberries, raspberries, blackberries, they rotated through his kitchen like loyal allies. Walnuts and almonds became his go-to snacks. Instead of chips or cookies, He kept a small jar of mixed nuts by his reading chair. Walnuts, with their brain-like shape, felt symbolic. They were loaded with omega-3 fatty acids, fats essential for maintaining flexible arteries and strong neural connections. These healthy fats didn't just support memory. They also helped regulate cholesterol, protecting his heart. Edward also made room for fish, especially salmon, sardines, and mackerel. These cold-water species were powerhouses of DHA, a type of omega-3 linked to better mood, reduced risk of heart attack, and slower cognitive decline. At first, he was skeptical. He hadn't grown up eating much fish. But after a few weeks of including it twice a week, he felt more focused and calmer. Whole grains entered his meals not just as sides, but as foundations. Brown rice, quinoa, and oats became his new staples. They digested slowly, providing stable energy without blood sugar spikes. They were also rich in fiber, which improved his digestion and helped control blood pressure. Together, these foods created a kind of internal defense system. Edward didn't think of them as medicine, but they worked like one. He realized that each meal was an opportunity to support his future. By choosing wisely, he wasn't just feeding his body. He was building resilience, protecting his memories, and nurturing a heart that still had many years left to beat strong. When Eleanor moved in with her daughter after turning 80, it was meant to be a simple transition. A bit more support, shared meals, less isolation. But as she settled in, something started to bother her. Despite eating regularly, she felt heavier, sluggish, and more forgetful. One afternoon, while helping unpack groceries, she paused at the ingredients on a frozen dinner box and frowned. "What is all this?" she asked quietly. That question led to a turning point. Eleanor and her daughter sat down that evening and began going through the pantry. Box after box contained unfamiliar words: hydrogenated oils, high fructose corn syrup, sodium nitrate. Her daughter explained gently, "These are the kinds of things we should probably start phasing out." First to go were the foods with phytamine high teats, trans fats. These fats, often found in margarine, packaged pastries, and fast food, do more harm than most people realize. They raise LDL, bad cholesterol, and lower HDL, good cholesterol. For the heart, that's a recipe for narrowed arteries and increased risk of heart attack. But what surprised Eleanor most was learning how trans fats also harm the brain. They contribute to plaque buildup that can reduce blood flow to brain tissue, impairing memory, and even increasing the risk of Alzheimer's. Next on the list was sugar. Eleanor had always had a sweet tooth. She loved her morning tea with 2 teaspoons of sugar and the occasional cookie after dinner. But sugar, especially in excess, acts like a slow toxin. It damages blood vessels, causes energy crashes, and triggers chronic inflammation throughout the body. For the brain, that means foggy thinking and accelerated cognitive decline. For the heart, it's a strain on the circulatory system, promoting hypertension and weight gain. Refined carbohydrates. Like white bread, white rice, and sugary cereals were also re-evaluated. These foods digest quickly, causing sharp spikes in blood sugar followed by crashes that leave the body tired and the brain unfocused. Eleanor swapped them for whole grains that released energy more gradually and provided essential fiber. Then came salt. Although the body needs some sodium, Eleanor's doctor had warned her before about high blood pressure. Processed foods, soups, deli meats, canned vegetables, were loaded with hidden salt. Reducing these helped bring her blood pressure back into a healthier range. Lastly, they cut down on processed meats. How about its bacon, sausage, ham? These foods often contain preservatives like nitrates and nitrites, which are linked to inflammation and vascular problems. Eleanor found she didn't miss them after discovering flavorful alternatives like grilled chicken or roasted lentils. Clearing the pantry wasn't just about removing items, it was about reclaiming health. Each small change gave Eleanor more clarity, better sleep, and a lighter step. She realized that avoiding certain foods wasn't a loss, but a gift, one that helped her body breathe easier and her mind think clearer. Thomas had always considered himself a practical man. As a retired engineer, he liked systems, clarity, and structure. When his doctor advised a heart-healthy diet to manage his blood pressure and cholesterol, Thomas nodded politely, but felt overwhelmed. "Just tell me exactly what to eat and how much," he said. What followed was one of the most helpful concepts he'd ever encountered: the healthy plate model. At its core, the idea was simple and brilliantly logical. Thomas pictured his plate as a pie chart, neatly divided into three main sections. Half the plate should be vegetables and leafy greens. These weren't just side dishes anymore. They became the foundation of every meal. Broccoli, spinach, carrots, and peppers provided fiber, vitamins, and powerful antioxidants that supported both his heart and brain. He started enjoying the variety, mixing raw and steamed, crunchy and tender. 1/4 of the plate belonged to lean proteins. At first, Thomas worried that meant giving up the hearty meals he loved. But he soon discovered he didn't need large portions to feel satisfied. Grilled chicken, baked fish, boiled eggs, tofu, or lentils all offered high-quality protein without the heavy fat content that burdens the heart. He realized it wasn't about eliminating meat. It was about choosing the right kind and keeping portions balanced. The final quarter was dedicated to complex carbohydrates, whole grains that released energy slowly. Brown rice, quinoa, whole wheat pasta, and even sweet potatoes became regular guests on his plate. These carbs didn't cause sugar spikes, and they kept his mind focused throughout the day. For someone who used to rely on white bread and crackers, the difference in energy was striking. One adjustment that made a surprising impact was adding healthy fats. In moderation, a drizzle of extra virgin olive oil on his salad, a few slices of avocado with lunch, or a handful of seeds sprinkled on soup gave meals richness and satisfaction without harming his heart. These fats helped reduce inflammation and improved nutrient absorption, especially for brain-friendly vitamins like A, D, E, and K. Beyond the composition of the plate, Thomas also began paying attention to portion size and meal timing. He shifted from 3 large meals to 4 smaller ones, avoiding that heavy, sluggish feeling he used to get after dinner. He no longer skipped breakfast, realizing it set the tone for his entire day. By viewing each plate as an opportunity to nourish, not restrict, he embraced a sense of control and purpose. He wasn't dieting, he was feeding his body with intention, building a routine that supported his long-term vitality. For Thomas, meals became not just fuel, but a quiet, daily ritual of care. Joan never used to think much about what she drank. In her younger years, she would start the day with coffee, sip soda in the afternoon, and enjoy a glass of wine in the evening. But after a dizzy spell sent her to the doctor, she began to take hydration seriously. Her blood pressure had spiked, and her doctor gently explained, "Your heart and brain are working harder than they should, partly because you're not drinking enough of the right fluids." This revelation was a turning point. Joan had always associated health with food, But now she saw that what she drank was just as important, especially as she aged. The body becomes less efficient at conserving water over time, and the sensation of thirst often weakens with age. For the brain, even mild dehydration can cause confusion, fatigue, and headaches. For the heart, it means thicker blood, which makes the heart pump harder and increases the risk of clotting. Joan began her transformation with the most basic yet essential change: water. She aimed for 8 glasses a day, starting with 1, as soon as she woke up. To make it easier, she kept a large glass on her nightstand and a water bottle within reach throughout the day. At first, it felt like a chore, but within a week, she noticed clearer skin, steadier energy, and fewer headaches. Her mind felt sharper, especially in the late afternoons when she used to crash. Next, she replaced her usual second cup of coffee with green tea. The gentle caffeine boost kept her alert without the jitteriness, and the antioxidants, particularly catechins, helped reduce inflammation and protect her blood vessels. It became a calming ritual, a warm cup, a quiet moment, a breath of mindfulness. She also cut back drastically on sweetened drinks. Fruit juices, once thought to be healthy, turned out to be sugar bombs in disguise. Instead of pouring a full glass, she started adding just a splash of juice to sparkling water for flavor. Sodas and energy drinks were eliminated entirely. Not only did they spike her blood sugar and energy levels unpredictably, but they also made her feel bloated and foggy. Alcohol, once a nightly comfort, became a weekend treat. Her doctor had explained that while moderate wine consumption could have some heart benefits, daily drinking often did more harm than good, raising blood pressure and disturbing sleep. Joan found that when she stayed hydrated, she actually craved wine less. In time, hydration became second nature. Every sip felt like a small act of care. Simple, but powerful. Her heart no longer raced without reason. Her thinking was clearer. And for the first time in years, she felt truly balanced from the inside out. Walter had always been a night owl. In his younger years, he would eat late, sleep late, and rarely worried about how his habits affected his body. But after turning 70, things began to shift. Sleep became lighter, digestion slower, and his energy more fragile. His doctor mentioned something that stuck with him. It's not just what you eat, but when and how you eat that matters just as much. That evening, Walter sat at his kitchen table and reflected. His late-night dinners, rushed breakfasts, and grazing through the day were no longer working for him. So he made a choice. Not a dramatic overhaul, but small, steady changes in his eating routine. The first step was dinner timing. Instead of eating at 9 or 10 p.m., he began preparing meals earlier and sitting down by 6:30. Within a few days, he noticed a difference. Less bloating at bedtime, better sleep, and no more. Waking up feeling heavy, digesting while the body is winding down at night, puts stress on the heart and interferes with brain recovery. By finishing dinner a few hours before sleep, Walter gave his organs time to rest, and in return, his sleep deepened. He also began practicing regularity in meal times. His body responded well to rhythm. Breakfast at 8, lunch at noon, a light snack at 3, and dinner before 7. This consistency allowed his metabolism to stabilize, reduced random hunger, and helped regulate his blood sugar. His days felt more anchored, and he no longer experienced sudden energy crashes. One of the most profound shifts was eating without distraction. For years, he had eaten in front of the TV or while reading. Now, he sat quietly, sometimes with soft music or a window view, Slowing down his meals helped him notice when he was full, improved digestion, and gave him a sense of calm he hadn't realized he was missing. Inspired by his reading, Walter also experimented with intermittent fasting. He chose a simple, 12-hour window, eating between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. This gentle version of fasting gave his body a break each night to repair and reduce inflammation. It wasn't restrictive, it was structured, and his mind felt clearer in the mornings. Importantly, Walter didn't treat these habits as punishments. He viewed them as forms of self-respect. He listened to his body more and learned that it didn't need constant snacking or heavy meals to thrive. With every choice, he felt more connected to his well-being. His heart beat steadier, his thoughts flowed easier, and his relationship with food shifted from routine to renewal. When Grace looked back on her journey at 82, she didn't see a dramatic diet or a perfect lifestyle. What she saw was a long string of small, steady choices that shaped her days and her health. There were no magical meals, no miracle cures, just daily care, a little more color on the plate, a glass of water before coffee, a walk after dinner, and most importantly, a mindset that health wasn't about rules, but about respecting her future self. For many years, Grace had tried various diets, only to abandon them weeks later. They felt like battles against cravings, against her own routines, against joy. But everything changed when she stopped focusing on restriction and began focusing on consistency. It wasn't about eating perfectly, it was about showing up for her body every day, in ways she could sustain. Not for a month, but for a lifetime. She began by making changes she could live with. White bread was replaced with whole grain, but only after she found a version she truly liked. She didn't quit sugar overnight, but gradually reduced it, letting her taste buds adjust. She still had the occasional piece of dark chocolate or a slice of cake at birthdays without guilt. Because what mattered was not the occasional indulgence, but the everyday foundations of her meals. Over time, those foundations paid off. Her doctor noticed her blood pressure had stabilized. Her memory stayed sharp enough to win board games with her grandkids. She didn't get winded climbing stairs, but beyond the numbers and achievements, Grace noticed something deeper. Peace. Her body felt like a partner, not a problem. Her mind was clearer, less fogged by fatigue or sugar crashes. Food became a source of nourishment, not anxiety. She also learned that no diet works in isolation. Sleep, movement, connection, and joy were equally important. Grace began sleeping 7 to 8 hours regularly, stretching in the mornings, taking long walks with neighbors, and gardening. These habits amplified the effect of her diet, reinforcing her energy and mood. When she felt off, moody, forgetful, or tired, she checked in with herself. Had she slept enough, drunk enough water, moved her body, nourished her plate? Perhaps the most powerful habit Grace developed was awareness. She listened, not just to her doctor or articles, but to her own body. Her clarity, digestion, mood, and sleep became her compass. And this awareness gave her freedom. Because health wasn't about control, it was about compassion. In the end, Grace didn't just live longer, she lived better. And each choice she made whispered the same message. You matter. Every day, keep going.